Well, our hope is that you were actually able to enjoy that and that didn't hit too close to home. But the reality is, whether you are here in the room with us or if you're watching live online right now as opposed to recorded later in the week, then the math is we are 4 days away from Thanksgiving and 33 days away from Christmas. So if you're anything like me, there is an excitement that rises inside of me when I think about that, because we need a great holiday season in 2020, and there's also some anxiety that rises inside of me as well. In fact, I think that is one of the great casualties of adulthood that I was just not prepared for. Nobody told me about the fact that the holidays get stressful, that they get difficult as you get older. Because for me, when I was a kid, when I was young, the holidays were just this straight shot to happiness. Maybe for you, the holidays have always been a little bit complicated or always a little bit challenging, or maybe you had a time period like this. I think about when I was elementary age or so, all I had to do was survive to Thanksgiving break. All I had to do was survive to Christmas break. And if I could do that, things were simple because I had nothing that I was responsible for, nothing that I had to stress about. I was oblivious to any family drama. The most stressful thing to me was if Santa knew the difference between Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. And as long as that guy had his stuff together, we were good, and it was going to be a great holiday. Today, there are certainly still happy things about the season that I am looking forward to. There's a way that I hope the holidays go, and there's still some warm, nostalgic, kind of traditional things that I look forward to every single year. Every single year I look forward to my mom's stuffing on Thanksgiving, and it's one of these secret family recipes where she's the only one who's allowed to make it. And the older I get, the more I become convinced that she gets her ingredients straight from Oregon, where hard drugs are now legal, because there's something weirdly addictive about whatever is in there. I get why it's a secret now. Or on Thanksgiving Day itself, my wife Emily and I, we do a turkey trot every year. We've done that for the last 5 years or so, which is a 5-mile run the morning of Thanksgiving. And the first year we did it, I just remember thinking, just wondering, going through again and again, what did I do wrong? Why is she punishing me? Why are we doing this on a day that's all about gratitude and joy? But now we're at this place where all of a sudden we realize carbs no longer count on Thanksgiving. And so we love it, and it's a great tradition that we have. All of that, and I'm looking forward to Christmas. Still love Christmas lights and Christmas music and Christmas, cookies, and I still get way more excited as an adult male about presents than I probably should or than is cool to be excited about, all of that is coming, but today, I would say my goal or the destination I hope to arrive at in the holidays is a little bit different than happiness now. I would say my goal really now is this word, peace. I just hope to experience a little bit of a break from the craziness of life, the anxiety, the stress of life, a little bit of peace from the negativity in the world, maybe some peace in some of the most important relationships in our lives, that there may not be peace in the relationship right now, but maybe for a day, maybe for a moment, there's those connective moments to get together. But then the reality is, to get to peace feels way more complicated than when I was young trying to get to happiness. Because the path to peace seems much more like navigating some kind of minefield. It seems much more like there's all these things you could step on, these things you could say, that you could bring up, ideas you're trying to ignore, people you're trying to ignore, whatever it might be that could come up, that could just kind of ignite the holidays for us. And I think the reason that is because holidays are so often a stark reminder of what could or should be, contrasted with what is not. I vividly remember the years that the holidays started to change for me. I remember the year when I was pretty young that we moved from Cleveland, Ohio to Austin. And that year, we used to have these big 20, 30-person Thanksgivings and Christmas celebrations. And then all of a sudden, it was just 6 of us. It was my core family and, 2 of my grandparents. And it was fun, but, it was just different. And I remember the year in middle school when my grandpa passed away. And I remember now there was only 5 of us around the table and 5 of us around the Christmas tree. And there was a big gaping hole there. And It was still the holidays. There were still good things, but it was different now. And I remember my 17th holiday season when that was the first time I had to celebrate Christmas at my mom's, and then I had to celebrate at my dad's, because that was the year that they first separated. And it was still the holidays, and there were still some things to look forward to, but things were just different. It could be any number of things for us. Perhaps it's a financial scenario. You always picture things getting better over time financially, and yet you find yourself going backwards, and it's painful to take a step backwards. Maybe there's a family drama, a family tension. Maybe a family has been split by this drama or by a hurt or by a divorce or by something like that. Maybe it's a loss. It's somebody who's just not there anymore. It can be any number of things, but there's something about the holidays where all of these things rise to the surface. All of our vulnerabilities and our insecurities and our hurts are out there, and then we're busy and we're stressed and we're comparing ourselves to everybody else around, and all of a sudden it just doesn't take much for one of those mines to go off and one of, some chaos to ensue. And that's every holiday season. Aren't you glad you came to church this morning to be encouraged as the holidays are coming? That's every holiday season. But this year, we get the special 2020 edition, which is kind of like the update to your iPhone that happens overnight that nobody asked for, and it makes your phone slower and glitchier. That's kind of like what we got this year. Because this year we get the COVID edition. This year we get the craziest political season that we've ever been in. I don't know how it works for your family, but for mine, for example, my brother is actually getting married the week after Thanksgiving. And so our family is a little divided about how we want to do Thanksgiving. Do we want to do like a traditional Thanksgiving like normal? And we have some people advocating for that, and some are like, hey, we shouldn't have a whole bunch of people in one spot before this really big day, and that causes some tension. Or politically, we have family that have voted on both sides of the aisle, plenty on both sides that have been very public on Facebook about who they voted for and why, and then they're all going to be around the Thanksgiving table together. And I'm sure that's going to go great. Like, that'll be awesome. In fact, if Thanksgiving is boring for you, I can't imagine that it will be, but there are like an infinite number of conversation starters this year, right? You can just like pull the pin on the grenade and just be, so, what do you guys think about voter fraud? Just let it go. Or who did you vote for and why? I mean, so many things that could add to the chaos this year. And so the question that I want to ask in part one of this Navigating the Season series is this: how do we navigate relational chaos to arrive at a destination of peace? Next week, we're going to talk about additional things that make the season chaotic. Today, we're talking about just specifically relationships. If you use Apple Maps or if you use Google Maps and you're putting peace into the destination, and you're like, that's where I want to arrive, what are the steps to get there? What is the path to get there? And so very specifically, I want to give you a list today, like a practical list, like follow these 1, 2, 3 steps, follow this order, and it's going to get us to our destination of peace. The good news is the list did not originate with me. This list is actually given to us by Paul in a letter to the Romans, and he gives this list to a group of people who were very familiar with relational tension. Very familiar. This was a group of people that had to deal with relational, socioeconomic tension, political tension, religious and cultural tension. And for this group of people as well, the tension with the people on the other side of them, these were people that could take away their freedoms, they could imprison them, they could literally sentence them to death. Like, the implications were huge of this tension. This wasn't just like my sister's coming in town and she's probably going to make some passive-aggressive comments, right? This was big. They were not just eyes to the sky, living in the clouds, idealistic. They seriously had to navigate this tension. And so I want to give the roadmap, but what I want to do today is something that we've never done before, so this could be a little confusing. Hopefully it comes together and makes sense. I actually want to start at the end of the passage. I want to start at the end of the directions, and I want to read the verses in reverse order the first time through. The reason that I want to do that is Paul actually starts with the starting point or a key that kind of unlocks the roadmap. Then he gives us the roadmap, and then he arrives at the destination. I want to start at the destination and work backwards because I think it gives special emphasis to the key or the starting point that makes all of this possible. So Paul, in Romans 12, verse 18, he says this. He says, live at peace with everyone. Which you might say, well, that's like the least helpful thing I've ever heard at church. That's the whole problem. Like, I can't do this. It's not possible. And clearly, Paul hasn't met, my grandpa or my aunt or whoever it is that's going to be around the table this year. He would have had a little caveat in there, live at peace with everyone except, this list of people. If you see that and you think that's not possible, Paul may actually agree with you, because he gives a little caveat before this, and he says, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Which, as a group in this room, or if you're watching online, we probably interpreted that maybe two different ways. Some of us were like, oh, that's my out, because it doesn't depend on me. They're crazy. They're broken. There's nothing I can do. They're never going to change, so I don't have to pay attention for the rest of the conversation. That's one way you could interpret this. Or you could interpret this as, oh, he just gave us our first practical step, because the lens is on me. The lens is on my piece of the pie. Even if I think I'm responsible for less than 1% of it, I'm in the relationship, so I have some percentage of responsibility here. The first practical step is to own what we can own in the relationship. And you might still think, well, that's still not possible. And Paul would still agree with you, because the way this sentence starts is, if it is possible. Implication, it may not be possible. But as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. This is the destination. This is what we plugged in terms of where we want to go. Now I want to give you the roadmap. Now I want to give you the steps that he provides. And when he says, if you follow these steps, that's the destination you will arrive at. So verse 17, starting to work backwards, he says this. He says, never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. See, when we're hurt and we respond out of that hurt to hurt others, we don't minimize our hurt. We don't get rid of hurt. We just add more hurt. When you respond to evil with more evil, you just multiply evil. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase mad or mutually assured destruction, but this is why nations attempt to form treaties and agreements with one another to say, hey, I see some potential for conflict in our future. Historically, we've had some conflict, and if we get into conflict again, there are some weapons in our arsenal that we're just not going to bring out. Because if we bring these weapons out of our arsenal, weapons like this, it is going to result in both of our destruction. This is not going to be good for either of us if we use these weapons. And so for you and I, there are some things we need to pre-decide. Like, I'm not going to bring this history up. I'm not going to attack their insecurity or their wound this way. I'm not going to attack just so that they feel pain. Because if I do, and I could, it's just going to destroy the whole relationship. It's going to hurt both of us. Paul says, don't repay evil with more evil. In verse 16, as we continue to work backwards, he says, live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all. This ordinary people concept is very simple. He just says we have a tendency to treat people different if we think we can get something out of them. And if we don't think we can get something from them, oftentimes we're dismissive of them. He says, don't do that. And then don't think you know it all. This is so powerful. If we just, like, as a culture had adopted this in 2020, it would be a very different year. Think about it. Like, think about how many of us, and I am absolutely including myself in this pool, okay? But think about how many experts we had pop up overnight in so many different fields. We have hundreds of millions of experts in this country, right, on so many big controversial topics. If you think about, for example, there are people that go to school for a decade that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education in order to speak intelligently in the medical field. And yet so many of us, we've read a couple articles, we've seen a couple of Facebook posts, and now we know how viruses originate, we know how they spread, we know how to control mass millions of people and how we would organize that so it doesn't spread. We know whether masks are effective or not effective and whether the vaccine is going to be. We know all these things, and we all have a doctor friend that we quote now. What if we just took the approach of maybe there's still some things I have to learn? And we're all experts in political theory now. Some of us super passionate about our candidate, and we know this political ideology is going to end here or here, and we know all the things this candidate has done in their past and all the things they will do in their future. Yet if we were challenged to name one reliable source, many of us, I'm not saying all of us, many of us couldn't name one. Or when it comes to racial injustice in our country, we saw a post, or maybe we went and we read a book, we did a little bit of Googling, and we combined that with our life experience to say something can or cannot, should or should not be done in that area. I had a professor in college. He had a PhD in African American studies, had written articles and books on the topic. And the grace and intelligence and dignity with which he would have these conversations with students, people that were on opposite sides of different issues, was extraordinary to sit under, no matter how you felt or what it was that you believed. It made me feel like nobody should ever tweet in like 200 characters something on this topic that is so incredibly complex. What if with some of these areas we just said, you know what? As I sit down around the table and the debate begins, maybe I don't know everything. Or just take the 2020 edition aside and just think about traditional holiday things. Maybe I don't know everything that's happening in their life. Maybe I don't know everything that's going on in their marriage right now. Maybe they're not actually mad about the way that I set the table. Maybe they're hurting because of what's happening at home. Maybe they're assuming everything's great in my life when they see my happy family, but maybe I am experiencing some of the same hurts, and there's more that we could actually connect on than there is for us to argue about. What if I don't know everything? And when you take that posture, well, verse 15 becomes possible. Because verse 15, Paul says, be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. In other words, empathize with, have compassion for, be with, suspend your judgment, don't try to fix, don't try and act like you know what to do all the time, but just be with them. And I think he's specifically talking about people who we're disconnected with, right? Because people who we're connected with, this is much more natural to do. This is unnatural to do with people who we have tension with, who we have hurt with, people who we kind of want to see fail because it brings a little satisfaction up with us. He says, be with them. In verse 14, Paul shows just how much of a visionary he was, how ahead of the times he was. He really predicted the future with this verse. Look what he says in 14. He says, #cancel those whom you disagree with. If someone does or says something you don't like, attack their character and their reputation, and get all of your friends to unfollow them on all forms of social media. Right? This seems like an appropriate way to navigate relationships in 2020. This seems like something that you can do. The reality is this doesn't help anybody. This doesn't help you feel better about you. This does nothing to reconcile or connect, and it does nothing to influence the world that sees the world differently than you do. This is not effective. What Paul actually says in verse 14 is this. He says, bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. This is a step above and beyond. Don't just avoid doing evil. This is actually be active about doing good. Do what is best for them. Pray that God will do what is best for them. Verse 13 says, when God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. This is not just check the box because it's a season of generosity. This is, I position my resources. I position my finances. I position my time to be ready to help those in need. I am looking actively for opportunities to do so. And then verse 12, this could really be our 2020 strategy. What if it had been this past year? Verse 12 says, rejoice in our confident hope, meaning the person of Jesus. Not a political system or anything like that. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble. Don't wish the season away. Be patient in trouble because perhaps God has something for you in those dark hallways. And keep on praying. Stay connected to Him. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. In other words, we may be at the end of ourselves. Some of us may be more tired than we've ever been or emptier than we've ever been, but there are more people around us than we've ever had before who need our service and need our support and need our encouragement and love as well. Why would we do any of this list? I mean, this is a genuine question. Well, why would we do that? Because this is going to cost us time. This is going to cost us money and energy and resources. This is going to benefit people who have hurt us and wronged us. This goes completely against a naturalistic worldview. If there is no God and it's just survival of the fittest, we just want our enemies to be destroyed. Why would we do things that are good for them? This is why I wanted to work backwards. Because really, if we're being honest, none of this makes sense unless we understand the starting point, unless we understand the key. And anytime you try to plug any destination into your Apple Maps or Google Maps, it always asks you, where is your starting point? Are you leaving from home? Are you leaving from your current location? Are you leaving from somewhere else? Because the directions aren't going to make sense unless we know where you're starting. These directions don't make any sense unless you understand the starting point. So here is the foundational verse that we've worked our way back to. Here is the key. Here is the starting point. In verse 9, Paul says, don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. To which you might just say, I can't. If I do this, it would be inauthentic. It would be faking it. And I think this means it requires, there's a couple things we have to understand about what Paul means when he says really love them. In our culture, so often, love is the emotion. And we talk all the time about that's a component of it, but love is so much more than an emotion. Love is the action. And you can do what is genuinely best for somebody else, even if the emotion hasn't caught up. So often, right actions lead to right feelings. Doing this inauthentically would be doing something in a passive-aggressive way. It would be doing good to kind of get a one-up in the relationship, to be manipulative, or so that they owe you something. But to just do something that is genuinely best for them, you can do that regardless of how you feel emotionally. You can do that authentically regardless of how you feel emotionally. But here's the other thing that makes this verse confusing, is in our culture, we don't have a clear definition of love. So when you read this, it sounds kind of fluffy. It sounds kind of simple. I'll just go love everybody and that'll make everything okay. Okay, great. Well, in our culture, love is just kind of whatever you feel like. It's just, honestly, do what makes you happy, do what kind of feels like the right thing, and it'll all work itself out. When that's the definition of love, yes, this is too simple, this is too fluffy, and that's not helpful, which is why we need a definition of love. John, who is one of the disciples of Jesus, he actually calls himself the one whom Jesus loved. Like he had a close, loving relationship with Jesus. He gives us an extraordinary definition of love in 1 John in his letter. And he says this, he says, "Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God." God is the source of love. He is the origin of love. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God, but anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. God is the definition of love. He is the example of love. He is the source of love. Notice that it does not say love is God. Okay, that's different. This is not saying, hey, love is just a supreme ethic. As long as you just love everybody, it'll be fine. It doesn't really matter what you believe. It's all relative. That's not what it says. It says God is love. Now we have parameters. Jesus is the example, the expression of love. We want to know what love requires of us? Look at what Jesus did. Look at what Jesus said. Because if that list is what love is, not necessarily the things I want to do or that feels good, but the list is don't repay evil with evil. The list says love is bless those who persecute you. Love is to be with, to empathize with, to suspend judgment, to have compassion for, to be hospitable to pray for, to seek forgiveness first, to take ownership, to apologize first. Well, if that's love, I don't know if I want to do that. I think Paul is saying, hey, I'm just giving you the roadmap. You get to decide if you want to take the steps and walk there. I'm just saying, if you desire peace in your relationships, this is the road to get there. Well, how do we know that God loves us? How do we know that this is true? Verse 9, John says, God showed how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. This is real. This is authentic. This is true love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. If you're in 2020 figuring like, where do we look for hope? Where do we have some joy? Where do we have some optimism? And you think that all the world has to offer us. Every other worldview, philosophy, and religion says you have to work on you to make yourself good enough for God or the gods or the energies or the spirits or whatever is out there. To reach nirvana or enlightenment or to be good enough on Judgment Day, whatever it might be, you have to work your way up to God. Meaning you define love, you define what is good, you work your way up to him. Christianity alone is fundamentally different. Because in Christianity alone, God made the first move. Love existed before we did. And out of love, we were created. God made the first move in our direction. And in case you were wondering, it wasn't like we were doing a great job. And God's looking at us, he's like, I'm so proud of them, I'm going to send Jesus to give them a little pat on the back. We had messed it all up. We were stuck in our sin. We broke the relationship. We were headed in the opposite direction of God, our back to God. About 7 chapters earlier, before that, Romans 12, Paul actually says we were enemies of God before we were reconciled with him through Christ Jesus. So God looks at us, and we've messed up the relationship, and he says, I'm going to pursue them anyways. I'm going to do what they could not. I'm going to send my Son for their sin. And that is our model for how we are to treat people who have broken relationship with us. John says that's our example. That's our inspiration now. He says, dear friends, since God loved us that much, we surely ought to love each other. No one has ever seen God. But if we love each other, God lives in us, and his love is brought to full expression in us. Meaning, God's love becomes more real to others when you love people this way. He is our source. He is our example. That love comes from him. And the way that we know how to love other people that way is because we have experienced it ourselves. In fact, if you've ever experienced this in a human relationship, it's powerful. It makes God's love that much more real to you. I have been fortunate enough, I've been blessed to have people that have treated me this way. There are people that have forgiven me that did not need to. There are people that have shown me grace when I did not deserve it. People who have done good for me when they did not owe it to me. And when those people did that in my life, it made God's love that much more tangible to me. You have the ability to do that to others. You have that kind of influence that when you love people this way, God's love will be more tangible to them. His love will be brought to full expression in us. And we know how to do that because of how God first loved us. See, now the starting point is radically different when we have our definition and we have our parameters on love, when we have our why. So now what I want to do is I want to look at the starting point and the directions and the destination just straight in order now that we understand the key. Let's go back to verse 9. He says, don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. And now we know what love means. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager, be ready to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Empathize, be with them. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. And if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. What if that was our approach to the relationships in our life? What if that was our approach this holiday season? Would that change anything for you? Would that change anything for the relationships in your life? And you may still check all the boxes. You may do everything right and still come to the conclusion that it's not possible. They're never going to change. They're never going to do anything different. I have been there, done that. Well, Paul acknowledges, yes, it may not be possible, but he's also emphasizing our bottom line, that there is benefit in the pursuit of peace, even without the promise of peace. There is benefit because you will learn something about you along that journey. There is benefit because you will go to deeper places in God's love than you ever have before. And there is benefit because your hurt will stop getting out on the people who didn't hurt you and who don't deserve the extra pain and the extra hurt. It's worth it because it is possible to have peace about a relationship, even if peace in the relationship is not possible. Because you will have peace and confidence that you have done everything you can as far as it depends on you. And when you have prayed for, and when you have sought to forgive, and when you have sought to bless, and when you have sought to apologize, and you've done everything you can as far as it depends on you, and still they don't change, you can have peace about that relationship, even if there isn't peace in it. It is still worth it. So, what do we do with all of that? It could be any number of those verses. Just pick one of them. It could be all of them. Like, that could be our marching orders. I want to try to simplify it a little bit for this holiday season if it's helpful in these last couple of minutes here. But I think what Paul is saying is, if it's possible, if you're going to go after it, then take ownership by taking the initiative. Take ownership, meaning as far as it depends on you, take ownership by taking the initiative. His language is so proactive here. He's saying if you place your trust in Christ, then the ownership is on you to make the first move. And he gives all kinds of action-oriented commands. I think about me personally in my life. If you ever choose to do or have done a season of counseling in your life, it is likely that your parents are going to come up in this, and that you will spend probably a disproportionate amount of time unpacking that. And my parents, my mom and dad, those are two people that I desire this kind of peace with, that I desire this kind of connection with. And I remember one day, it was so vivid. I remember talking to my counselor about the fact that there's nobody that can make me feel younger quicker than my parents. Now, I don't know if that's true for you guys or not, but there are so many times I feel like a 5-year-old so quick in front of my dad. Like, oh, I'm so dumb, I don't know anything, I'm ignorant. Or, in front of my mom, I go into teenager mode. And I can't empathize, and I just want to argue, and I just want to debate, and I just want to be right and prove my point, just like I did when I was a teenager. And it can happen like that. And I was explaining to my counselor how this comes up in me and how they make me feel. And he interrupted, and he paused, and he said, hey, here's one simple framework, one small tweak that you may want to make in your language that will affect your thinking, that might be really helpful. If you didn't say, they make me feel this way, but you instead said, I feel blank when they blank, what happens is you take the ownership on you. Because when you say, they make me feel, you're giving all the power to them. If they can control how you feel, well, there's nothing you can do about that. But if you take the ownership, here's the thing the reason that is helpful. You can't always control what happens to you. You can't. Life is unpredictable. But you can influence what happens inside you. You can influence how you respond. And that was a game changer for me, because I realized I need to own what I can own in the relationship. And what's really wild is over the last couple of years, this is something that is in process. So I think a lot of times I want to share stories from stage of something that was chaotic and it was bad then, but now we've wrapped a bow on it and it's all good. This is something that is in process. And I still regularly meet with both my parents and unpack things from their story that I've never heard before, things from their childhood, things of how they saw my childhood that have been so connected. And we've had moments of peace and moments of understanding that we've just never had before. But it has to start with me not blaming and me taking personal ownership. Maybe for you, that looks like picking up the phone first. It looks like texting first. It looks like writing a note or a letter first. It looks like sending flowers or cookies first. It looks like praying for or beginning the process of forgiveness or apologizing first. Whatever it might be, taking ownership means taking the initiative. I think the other thing that Paul is saying that you have to do here is you have to clarify expectations. Because he says, hey, it may not be possible. There is an if here. And if you assume I go and do this list, and 4 days from now, this Thanksgiving, 2 decades of hurt and kind of a cycle of us going at each other's throats is just going to go away, you're going to be let down, and you are going to give up. I was talking to a guy this week, and he said one of the most helpful things he ever heard with some of the relational tension he experienced was he had somebody point him to the proverb that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Meaning if you get your expectations up every time, maybe this is the year everything will change, and then it doesn't, right? You get disappointed enough times, and you become kind of cynical, kind of negative, and it can kind of poison the relationship and poison our heart. So he said, what we had to do is we just really needed to clarify our expectations. And so this guy and his wife, they have a complicated relationship with his in-laws. And he said, our win for Thanksgiving, the way we know we had a fantastic Thanksgiving, is if the food is good. And if the food is good, everything else beyond that is just above and beyond. Fantastic. But that's our big win. And then they try to have fun with it. They say they count the number of passive-aggressive comments over the meal. And so if there's under 5 passive-aggressive comments, they get to go where she wants to go for dessert afterwards. And if there's more than 5 passive-aggressive comments from the in-laws, they get to go where he wants to go for dessert. And they have fun with it because they're like, we expect this. We know this is going to happen. There's no reason to get so flustered every single time they do the same thing over and over and over again. You have to clarify your expectations based on where you are at in your relationships. If family dynamics have changed, if family has split, if somebody is no longer around, what does a win look like right now so that I don't jump off the path and I keep moving forward towards peace? And then last is this: if it's possible, I could have said this first because it's really the starting point, stay connected to the source of love. Because if you don't, it's kind of like setting this roadmap and getting in the car and having no gas in the tank. You are never going to make it there. We have to have the humility to say, if anything is going to change in these relationships, I actually need to grow. I need to be able to do something in the future that I can't do today. I need my capacity for compassion to increase. I need my capacity for empathy to increase. I need my ability to forgive to increase. And the only way I'm going to be able to do something in the future that I can't currently do today is to stay connected to the source of love, the definition of love. And as I discover what my Heavenly Father has done for me, now I can go and do that for others. Bottom line, there's benefit in the pursuit of peace, even without the promise of peace. It's worth it in what you learn about you, what you learn about your Heavenly Father, how it impacts those around you, and you can have peace about the relationship even if you don't have peace in it. So my question for you is, if it's possible, where can you pursue peace this holiday season? Don't wait for the next one, or you will always be waiting for the next one. The only way to pull that dream forward of a peaceful holiday season into reality is to pursue it and take the initiative. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you that you first exemplified for us relational peace, what it looks like to pursue somebody in the middle of hurt, in the middle of pain, when you sent your son Jesus for us. God, thank you that you're with us in every single one of these moments and every single one of these days. And God, would you grant us the strength that we don't yet have, the heart that we don't yet have, the ability that we don't yet have to pursue peace in all of these relationships. God, thank you that you've modeled this for us. We love you and we need you. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. You guys have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we'll see you for part 2 next week.